Dear friends, God's grace is with us today. Amen. Sometimes I like to write stories that are based upon gospel stories. And so I have written a story about today's story. And yes, there is some reading between the lines in my story, but that's the way stories many times are. So I want to read to you this story that I've written, and it primarily is about this woman that we have met in the gospel. This is how it goes. Just as she had done almost every day for the past 20 years, she began her 2-mile walk from her home in Sychar to Jacob's well to draw her day's supply of water. Usually as she walked, she passed the time by just looking at the scenery or by daydreaming. Daydreaming was a nice escape from the reality of her life. But today was different. Today as she walked, she didn't notice the scenery, she didn't daydream. Today as she walked, she thought deeply about the reality of her life. She thought about being a Samaritan. Why do the Jews treat us the way they do? Looking down their noses at us. Why are they superior and we inferior? Has it always been this way? Is this what the Creator intended? But then they claim that we don't belong to God, that we don't believe the right things about God. She had never been able to understand how some people could be considered unclean and untouchable, to be avoided by the righteous. Wasn't God the creator of both the Jew and the Samaritan? Today she thought, it's hard to be a Samaritan. She thought about being a woman. Why did men dominate and control her? She sensed early on as a child that everybody would have been a lot happier if she was born a boy. Her brothers would talk and dream about things they would do and what they would be. Once she shared her hopes and dreams, and they just laughed at her. You're just a girl. Didn't God create us male and female? And didn't God say it was good? She thought about the day she was 10 years old, a day she would never forget. Her mother took her aside and told her that she would be going to live with another family. Her father had sold her as a servant to cover a debt that he owed. She felt like a piece of property and not a person. She thought, it's hard to be a woman. She thought about being human and how quick people are to judge. Sure, she had made her share of mistakes. She remembered how she used to come to the well in the early morning along with all the other women. But the way they started avoiding her, whispering behind her back, made her want to run away. No one tried to understand her. No one tried to put themselves in her shoes. It was too painful to come when the other women were there. And so she started coming at noon, when she knew she would be by herself. It was hard to be an outcast among her own people. When she finally arrived at Jacob's well this day, her heart sank. There was someone sitting there, not just anybody, a Jewish man. She didn't need any more put-downs today. She felt like turning and leaving, but she needed the water. As she stepped to the well with her head bowed and her eyes looking at the ground, an amazing thing happened. This Jewish man spoke to her. He didn't speak down to her. He didn't speak at her. He spoke to her. She had never had a man speak to her as he did, with gentleness, kindness, respect. Then he asked her for a drink of water. And she watched with utter amazement as he drank from her cup. Jews don't drink from the same cup as Samaritans, but this one did. He asked about her family. He asked about her husband. She said she had none. To her surprise, he said, "Yes, I know. You have had 5 husbands, and the one you live with now is not your husband." She was astounded that he knew this about her. Yet she was even more astounded that it didn't seem to change the way he felt about her. Not much later, a group of men arrived at the well. She counted 12 of them. These men seemed shocked that he was sitting there talking with her. He got up to leave with them. She desperately wanted to go with him, and she got up the courage to ask, "May I come with you?" He said, "No, return to your village. You are needed there." As she left the well to return home, she felt like a different person than when she had arrived. She felt like a new person. She couldn't explain it. She only knew that through her encounter with this Jewish man, she felt different. For the first time in her life, she felt that it was good to be a Samaritan. For the first time in her life, she felt that it was good to be a woman. She felt like this was a new beginning. She was lifted up. She was liberated. She felt like a child of God. When she got home, it dawned on her why he told her to return to her village. As she looked around at the people, she realized that they were just like her. They were people who were thirsty. Thirsty for life-changing water. Thirsty for water that is grace and is mercy. He was right. These people needed her. They needed to know, as she had discovered, that there was one who had come into the world that could satisfy their thirst. Amen.